Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Unsung Heroes. The FXR Spring Creek National is done and dusted. It's in the books. Round 7 of 11 in the 2026 AMA Pro Motocross Championship is in the books. And of course, as always, I, Trey Stire, am here to recap the top privateer performers from each class. And a lot of great runs from some of the underdogs of the sport on Saturday. Lots of chaos and carnage in the 250 class. In the 450 class, things were a bit more straightforward and a bit more normal, but it's motocross. It's always unpredictable. Thank you so much for joining me this week, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or YouTube. Thank you for tuning in and supporting the underdogs of the sport. We are kicking things off on the Unsung Heroes this week. Spring Creek, round 7 of the AMA Pro Motocross Championship. A very wild day in the 250 class. Lots of carnage, especially at the beginning of the first moto. And speaking with me, one of the racers who was involved in the carnage but somehow rebounded to score points, joining the show this week. He competes in the 250 division, number 146 on a Yamaha, backed by the EBR Performance Family Power Sports Team. Please welcome from the great state of Texas, Hayes Edwards to the Unsung Heroes. Hayes, what is up, man? The one Ricky Bobby meme where he's like, yep, I'm flying through the air right now. This is not good. To scoring points, dude. How did you do it?
Yeah, that's an eventful Saturday, but man, we managed to hold on and put a few decent rides together for sure.
We'll go ahead and get into things. Obviously, some big changes at Millville this year, and you can talk about those as well. Mount Martin altered a good bit. Usually you have that full-on downhill descent. This year, some S turns in there. It seemed like it really opened up passing, but overall, it was a good day for you. Obviously, you had that wild crash that I'm sure you can tell me about in detail. In the start of the first moto, there were bodies flying everywhere, bikes flying everywhere, but you charged from 39th place after the crash to 21st to score a point in that first moto, and you backed it up with another point later in the afternoon, your first time scoring points in both motos during your career. Take me through your Saturday in general from qualifying to the motos. As you said, very eventful day, but you walked away from Millville with a couple points in your best career performance so far.
Showing up to the track, I didn't even know they were changing the track, right? So I walked up and to see, yeah, I mean, just to see Mount Martin gone was kind of a shock to me, as well as the rollers. I feel like those are the two main attractions at Millville. But I mean, they ended up swapping the rollers back for Saturday, but still, Mount Martin being gone, I mean, last year I had some decent rides there, but I mean, I literally felt like that was the main attraction. That was my first time there, and like seeing like Voland and Shock literally launch down the hill, doubling those two rollers, I was like mind blown, right? So to see that section change, um, like I said, I was surprised, but at the same time, it's always nice showing up to a track that you've been to and you got a new obstacle or a new section, right? So I was excited to get on the track and kind of just pick those few sections apart that were changed. And honestly, I enjoyed them. Like, yeah, maybe you're not going 800 miles an hour down the hill, right? But it switched it up for sure. I thought it was gonna be one line, but it worked out to what I thought I liked, right? I like a little more technical, tight sections rather than letting it hang out. So, like I said, I enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, I mean, qualifying was good. I the first session I really wanted to, like I said, I had a good moto at Southwick, my last one, kind of the same thing that happened in the first one, crashed first turn, and then I came back to 20th. So I was pumped on that ride and kind of had some confidence going into this weekend. So yeah, first qualifying session, I really just wanted to kind of make a statement, and I went out there, and I felt like I did that for what I was given. I was sitting 16th for a minute, ended up 20th, I believe, or 21st or somewhere around there, which is the best I've ever qualified. So, like I said, I was pretty pumped with that. Second one, went out, tried to do the same thing, dropped a few seconds, but everyone got faster. I think I ended up 23rd maybe. So, still my best qualifying. So I was pumped with that, and then heading into the first moto, it was really just kind of like a do or die thing. Like I said, some good confidence from Southwick, some good confidence from the first few qualifying sessions. I did exactly what I wanted to do. And then I was feeling really good for the first moto. So and I was really, honestly, I was just worried about executing my start. If I could get up there, you know, I'm pretty confident in myself that I can stay up there. And I did just that, honestly. We were coming around the first corner. I was maybe ninth before Dudney and Levi, everybody started hitting the deck. So like I said, literally coming around the first corner, I was like, okay, here we go. Let's have a good moto. And then I don't know who was in front of me. Some of the Star dudes, it was like bike. I couldn't see, had dirt on my tear offs, dirt was flying everywhere, bike, and then it cleared up, and I was probably 2 foot from Davy's bike. And in my head, it was like, okay, you can either, it's such a split second decision, right? But in my head, I was like, I didn't think about hitting the brakes. It was just, if I could get my front wheel over his bike, I think I would be fine. But it was just too little too late at that point. I smoked his gas tank. Somebody said I exploded his gas tank. Maybe that's why I didn't finish. I feel a little bad. But no, I hit that thing straight on. And honestly, as soon as I hit it, I didn't think it was that bad. I was like, okay, I could ride this out. But it ripped my left hand off, and it kind of like, once my rear wheel hit Davy's bike, it more or less just sent me into a seat bounce over the bars, and I was, you know, hands in the air, rolling the windows down, doing the whole 9 yards. But thankfully the Millville track crew watered the heck out of that section, so I landed in just like some mush. I was fine. And then honestly, once that hit, you go from such a high, right? You're 8th, 9th. Okay, let's have a good moto, and then you're picking your bike up. You got dirt all over your gloves, and you're sitting in 40th, and your bike won't start, right? So it's kind of, you got to have a quick change of mentality, right? It's okay. Let's see the pace. I've never been that far up front before, so I was pretty pumped to like see the pace those guys had. And then, like I said, I'm sitting in 40th again, so it's like, okay, so pick yourself up, pull a little tear off, and then honestly, from that point on, it was just see how many dudes I could pick off, to be honest.
You had a phenomenal comeback ride, as you mentioned, dead last to 21st, getting back into the points. What spots of the track were you using to pick off different riders? Was it somewhere where you would just go around the entire track and find ways around people, or were there one specific section, a specific area that you would use to your advantage lap after lap to get guys?
Yeah, well, so I don't know if this happened when I was in the pileup or whatever, but my rear brake ended up going out 3rd lap. So charging down the hills was a bit of a struggle the first moto. I felt like I was losing quite a bit of time there, but I had a really good line before the finish line, that kind of like those 3 tables in a row. I had a really good line around the outside, and then I was honestly just scrubbing those tables as hard as I could coming up on people, because it sounds crazy. It's 3 jumps. Everybody does the same thing over them, right? But if you could stay just that much lower over each jump, by the time you got to the corner, you could honestly just outbrake the person, right? So I felt like that was a big spot that I made a lot of passes happen really quick, especially later in the motos. Some dudes were maybe getting a little tired and kind of just jumping them straight. And I felt like if I could just lay it flat over them, I could maybe pass them before I even got to the corner. You know what I mean? So that, and last year I enjoyed that spot too. And I thought I made a lot of passes happen there. But yeah, I think that, and then also after the mechanics area, kind of down that straightaway into that little like right left chicane where they marked the whole shot. I was trying to set up a little bit. Most dudes were just following the main line, and I was kind of crossing over the main line and then crossing back over to the inside in that left-hander, which I don't think most of them expected it when I did it. I feel like kind of caught a few guys off guard. They were revving at me, but it worked out. I ended up getting by them. So I feel like those were honestly the two main spots that I could make things happen for sure.
Of course, you end up charging through the pack and getting into the points, but sometimes when you're racing up through the field, you got your head down. You're not really focused on the pit board. Did you have any idea that you were closing back in on the points by the end of the moto?
uh, no, it's funny because normally I'm a pit board freak. I try to look at that thing every single lap, right? But I don't know. For some reason in that moto, it felt like I really wasn't passing that many dudes. Like the first few laps, maybe 5, 6 laps in, it was just like 38, 38. I felt like every time I looked at the pit board, it was 38th, and I was like, dude, am I even making any passes happen right now? And then yeah, like I said, I just put my head down, and I think maybe 4 or 5 laps ago, he put P23 on the board, and at that point, I was like, oh, dude, I think I could at least, if I dig, I think I could at least get close, 22nd, 21st, maybe even 20th. I didn't really know how many dudes were in front of me, but yeah, I think once I saw P23, I was like, okay, we might have a chance to at least score 8 points.
Here you are. It's your second season of Pro Motocross for those who might not be as familiar with your career, but you started last year, Thunder Valley, put it in the motos. Now you're here year two. You skipped the Cali rounds once again, but you're going back to all of these tracks for the second time. You have a little bit of a notebook. I know you mentioned that you like seeing the changes at Millville, something a little bit different to try to test yourself with, but how beneficial has it been for you to come back to some of these tracks with a little bit of a notebook from last year and really find ways to improve or keep on improving what you already had dialed in?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, like I said, skipping the first few Cali rounds was kind of not something I really wanted to do, but at the same time, you're paying for all this on your own, doing everything by yourself. It's hard to make the trip out there that far, right? A few day trip where I can start at the third round, which is only, you know, 12, 14 hours from our place in Texas to Colorado. So that's mainly the reason why we do that. But to come back and keep man, like I said, last year it was a bit of a struggle, and I don't think I was super happy with how, not that how I was riding, but just more or less like um just the way things were happening, right? You got to learn the track, you got to learn the schedule, first year, everything. That was a lot, I think, to handle for me. But to come back this year, like I said, you already know the tracks, you already know how the schedule works. And then the main thing I think is just building confidence every weekend, right? You put yourself in good positions, and you start to feel like you belong up there. So yeah, man, this is some of the most fun I've had on my dirt bike in a long time, and I'm really enjoying it.
It was your rookie year of Supercross as well as most recent season 2026. I know you ultimately didn't get in the main event like you wanted to, but you had some rides where you were close and you were definitely knocking on the door. I remember being in the press box at Cleveland and watching you charge after Nick Romano, and of course, Nick's a guy who scored a podium in the outdoor season this summer. But first year of Supercross under your belt, the EBR Family Power Sports team were supporting you along the way. Talk about your first year of Supercross as well, because you had some solid runs in futures last year, but man, there were so many talented riders on the East Coast, from factory guys to veteran privateers. It had to be like jumping in from the big fish in a small pond to all of a sudden, man, you got all the sharks in there swimming around. It had to be a huge jump for you. What were your takeaways from your first year of Supercross, and what are you looking forward to improving upon for 2027?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I did futures last year, and um, I thought I was getting prepared and had a pretty good base of what I thought to expect coming into this year. And then you show up at the first round at Arlington, and it's 10 times what you thought, right? These dudes are, every single one of them, like, obviously you got your 1 through 10 factory guys, but 10 through 40, like these dudes are no slouches, right? Every weekend they're going to show up and they're going to have the same exact pace. I feel like literally, 18 to 36 in qualifying, like if you dab your leg 2 extra times a lap, you could go from qualifying 22nd to qualifying 33rd in literally 2/10. You know what I mean? So that was the biggest thing I think I had to adjust to. It was like, first of all, qualifying is a big thing, right? If you don't execute in qualifying, you're gonna be sitting in the stands, which was a kind of a kick in the gut. Like I thought I was riding decent at Daytona, and I ended up literally qualifying 40th. So it was like, man, we got to get to work. But and learning the tracks too, I think is the biggest thing. Like, out these outdoor tracks stay the same, but every weekend you got to show up. And yeah, a Supercross triple is a Supercross triple, but when you've only hit maybe 10 Supercross triples in your life, it's like, it's pretty scary. I'm not gonna lie to you. But no, I think there were definitely some good takeaways, like you said. Philly, yeah, 5th in LCQ, and then as well as Cleveland, like you said. And I think, going back to what I said, just gaining confidence, it was the first few rounds I wasn't really that close, maybe a 10th in LCQ or whatever. And then yeah, Cleveland, I mean, I know Romano crashed, but still the last 2 laps, he was probably 6 seconds out in front of me, and by the finish line, it was half a second. So to reel in, a dude that's on a PC bike, I felt like that was kind of the breakout moment for me, where I realized, like, okay, maybe it's not so much a skill gap, and it's just kind of believing in yourself and believing that you can do it at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So no, and I truly feel like every single time I was out there on a Supercross track, whether that was practice or any of the East Coast rounds, I was learning. Literally every time I went out there, whether that's whoops, flowing through a rhythm section, pushing through jumps a little better, getting off the brakes in the corner, like, I really seriously felt like I was learning every single time. And I think that's what I enjoyed about Supercross a lot. All these amateur kids ride outdoors their whole life, right? And then this is what I was explaining to my dad, like, starting to ride Supercross, it's like you're almost learning a whole different sport. It's a lot of new things coming at you quick, especially when a bunch of the dudes you're racing have been doing it for 7, 8, 5, whatever, however many years they've been, and then to come in your rookie season and expect to be up there, it's a hard task for sure.
Of course, you're from Texas, a lot of moto talent from Texas, both past and present. Van Martin has been working with you some, a former pro, a guy who scored a national number or 2 in his career. Talk about your training program. I'm personally not too familiar with it, but how are you spending these weeks training in between the races? What does an average week for Hayes Edwards look like on the bike, off the bike?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, I mean, as you would know best, you got your October, November, December sort of boot camp until Supercross starts. But right now, it's more or less just maintaining my fitness and staying comfy on the bike, right? So I mean, right now, it's fly back Sunday, kind of chill, honestly, not do much. You're pretty shot from your Saturday motos, and then Monday, maybe a little spin, a little gym session, something light to keep just keep the body moving more or less. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll do some pretty hard motos, or mainly Tuesday hard motos, and then a gym session as well. And then Wednesday, something lighter, maybe some section starts, maybe a few sprints just to keep keep stuff coming at you fast. And then another gym session Wednesday, or road bike ride, whatever that may be. And then depends on if we're flying out late or early Thursday, honestly, if we're flying out early, then Wednesday night, you're packing your stuff up and just getting ready for the weekend. If we're flying out Thursday night, then maybe it's a gym session or a run Thursday, or if it's too late, honestly, then like last week I rode Thursday morning, um, just to get on the bike, because I don't like, if I got 2 days off on the bike before a Saturday race, I don't really like that. I like only one day off, preferably. But like I said, it's hard when you're flying out and everything, and not getting press day either. Press is a big help, I feel. But no, man, yeah, right now it's pretty mellow, to be honest. Just keeping the fitness up for the end of these motos, and staying, keeping your timing dialed in on the bike, more or less.
A lot of people in pro motocross and supercross come from two-wheel families, but instead of coming from the dirt side of things, from the supercross, motocross side of things, your family has more of a background in asphalt racing. Your father with Superbike championships, with MotoGP podiums. For you, though, you went the dirt and the jumps route rather than the asphalt route. What led you to supercross and motocross instead of racing street bikes and racing at some of these spectacular road courses around the world?
Yeah, man, I don't quite know, to be honest with you. I think it was just a love for bikes from, when I was a kid. I was probably 3 or 4. I used to walk around with the little uh kind of like handheld bag just full of toy dirt bikes, and my nickname was Hayes Ricky Carmichael Edwards. That's what everybody called me. I was just, honestly, I just loved everything about it. I used to watch videos of, I can remember I was probably 6 or 7 years old, sitting at the counter watching YouTube dirt bike crashes, dirt bike ruts, like just anything dirt bikes. It was I enjoyed. And then honestly, I don't know, we just never really had much of an interest, I guess, for road racing. Um, my dad kind of always told me, it was like, and I don't know if it's true, honestly. Maybe he was just trying to get me away from it, honestly. But he always told me that the road race scene was dying off, and not only dying off, but dying off for an American kid. So the way he explained it was, you got to pay to go over there, you got to pay to ride a bike, you got to basically pay to do everything, right? So, which it's ironic because we're paying for everything now, racing motocross, but there was just never really took it and ran with it. It was always dirt bikes, I feel like.
4 rounds to go now in the pro motocross season. Washougal coming up this weekend, then a break. Of course, the last three, Unadilla, Budds Creek, Ironman. For you, it's your end of your sophomore season outdoors. What are you looking to accomplish here in these last few rounds? I know you mentioned you had the start dialed at Millville and you were very excited for it, but unfortunately, you didn't really get to show it and run that pace with those top level guys despite working your way through the field. What things are you really looking forward to working on, and what are you trying to accomplish before 2026 comes to an end?
For sure. I mean, one of the big things I think is just ending on a good note, right? Ending on a good note so I can be in the right headspace for a full 2027, right? But for as these last 4 go, like you said, I scored points both motos this weekend, but that was a 21st, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, all these dudes are gnarly, but I want to start mixing it up, whether that's, man, I don't know, it's just, I feel like a lot of it's in my head and just believing in myself. If I believe in myself, and I can find a good pace and get a start up there, I feel like I can latch onto those dudes and maybe be a top 15 guy. That would be I say a big goal for me. I would be pretty pumped on that. Just, well, I mean, first of all, you gotta get in the top 20, right? But pushing a big guy for me, like, is Lux. I look at Lux and it's like, man, a few years ago I was in B class, he was in A class. No, we were both in B class at Loretta's, and I felt like the pace between me and him, he don't get me wrong, he was faster than me for sure. But I mean, a second, maybe 2 seconds right there, and now look at him. He's a fit. He just got fit this last moto. You know what I mean? And was leading heat races and Supercross. It's like, and I enjoy being around Lux. He's a really good dude, one of my buddies. But I look at him as kind of like a path in a sense, right? And I think, I don't know, I haven't talked to him in a minute, but for him, I would think it's also just confidence. Like I said, he starts clicking off these leading the heat race, didn't quite win, but whatever. He's third in a heat race. He's 10th, 11th, ninth in these motos, just got fifth. It's like, man, I think if you can just get on a roll and keep it going, right? Is a big thing. So for me, yeah, I want to start pushing in the top 20 and man, just get good starts. If I want to get a good start, maybe hop, try and hop in the top 10 on the start and just feel that pace for a little bit, right? Because you can ride during the week all you want by yourself with some fast dudes, but until you start top 10 at a pro national with Juju, Hymus, Levi, all these dudes, you're never gonna understand the pace until you're in that. So, man, I just wanna learn, keep learning, and definitely. But I feel like a big goal for me is trying to start pushing in that 15 to 17 range. I would be pretty pretty happy with that by the end of the year.
This has been Hayes Edwards on the Unsung Heroes of Spring Creek, from flying through the air to scoring points in both motos. Job well done on Saturday. Before we conclude, feel free, give some love to some of your sponsors, those who are helping you get to the racetrack each and every weekend. Also, feel free to plug some of your social media stuff, where people can find you after they get done listening to this show.
Absolutely. Man, honestly, it's just me and my parents right now. Common Ground Suspension, EBR Performance, Josh helping us with the motors. Man, other than that, we're solo in this thing, trying to take it and run with it. Socials, man, we got H4YE5 on Instagram. I mean, that's about it. Hayes Edwards on TikTok. That's about it. If you want to hit me up or anything with any help or anything for these last few rounds, definitely don't hesitate. We'll throw you on the bike or get a helmet wrap, whatever you need, man. And I appreciate you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Of course, man, congrats once again on your points. You heard it here from the man himself. Go help him out if you so wish to do. Go give him some love, some sponsorship on that bike. Put some more decals on the number 146 machine. But best of luck throughout the rest of the season, and excited to see what the future has in store for you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you once again to Hayes Edwards for appearing on this week's edition of the Unsung Heroes. Some great insight from the number 146. Be sure to follow him for the rest of the season and see how his career progresses. And now we're going to hop into the 250 class. There were a lot of great performers on Saturday in that division. We begin with AEO Power Sports KTM Racing's Carson Mumford. What a performance. His best career overall finish and moto finish. First career moto podium and an absolutely phenomenal Moto 2 ride. Carson, 11th place in the first moto. It was a decent result. He worked his way through the field a bit. Of course, he's had plenty of top 10s this season. Moto 2 was a whole new level from the number 71. He was in that train of riders to the front of the field. Caden Minier, Levi Kitchen, Julian Beaumaire were all in there. He showed a wheel to Kitchen to try to take second, got by Minier to take third. Julian Beaumaire, of course, your overall winner, was challenging him late in the moto, but it didn't phase him a bit. Beaumaire ended up going down. Mumford survived that last lap pass attempt to take a P3, shattering his previous best moto finish, not only of his career but of the season as well. His previous best moto was a fifth at Loretta's in 2020, his rookie season. His best run this year was a seventh at High Point in Moto 2. Also, the best finish in the history of the AAO Power Sports KTM team in terms of a single moto, and a fifth place overall. What a performance from Mumford. A lot of people very happy for him. He has really rebuilt himself. One of the most solid privateers in the field this year. Of course, the AEO team does get some support from KTM, but obviously not a full factory operation. In his interview with Haley Shanley after the race, the quote that really stuck out to me, he said, "There are so many times I almost gave up on myself. I'm so happy I stuck it out. Congratulations to Carson and the entire AEO team. And of course, this was right off the heels of Carson and the AEO team announcing an extension through the 2027 season. So he will be back aboard AEO equipment and staying with a team for the first time in his career for 2 seasons. Carson has bounced around a lot and went from team to team, and now he finally has a home for a little bit longer than a year. Congratulations to both team and rider. Great performance from Carson. I also encourage everyone to check out this week's edition of the TWMX Recap Show on the Transworld Motocross YouTube page. We spoke with Carson, and he gave plenty of great insight to his mindset, his relationship with the AEO team, and much more. Go check that out and hear more from the number 71. Also, a great performance. He was a bit overshadowed by some of those runs to end the day, but Dylan Schwartz was back into the top 10, of course, one of the most solid privateers every single summer on a Toyota Redlands Bar X Yamaha. 10.8 was his moto scores. It was a strong day. 15th career 250 motocross top 10. His second of the season. Of course, he scored a top 10 overall at High Point when all the Bar X boys were firing on all cylinders. But Dylan Schwartz, man, he's always rock solid. He's always right there in the mix. And a 15th career 250 motocross top 10. Shout out to Dylan for the great run. Just behind him in the overall standings, 15.5 scores. Another racer who claimed their best career moto finish. That would be Lux Turner. Another one of the Bar X boys, number 43. We had 42, then 43. If you go to the Nationals and you're like me, sometimes it's a little easy to get confused by the Bar X guys, considering they have 40, 42, 43, and 443 on their team. But nevertheless, a great ride in the second moto from Lux. He worked his way up to 15th despite a couple crashes in the first moto, and he also latched onto that front group. He ran sixth for pretty much the entire moto, but late in the going, he did not fade, he did not waver, and on the final lap, he ended up passing Caden Minier and stealing a podium from Caden Minier as well. If Minier would have stayed in fifth, he would have been ahead of Levi Kitchen in the overall standings, but Turner took fifth on the final lap. No rest for the weary, and a great performance by Lux Turner. Fifth in the moto, 11th overall. Of course, Lux had that great day at Fox Raceway, so he wasn't able to claim the best overall finish of his career or set a new high this weekend in Millville, but he put together an amazing final moto, his best of his career so far, P5. Lot of non-factory riders getting great days. A little bit further back in the overall sheet, 12-12 for 13th overall. The consistency paying off for Avery Long at his home track, another one of the AEO Power Sports KTM riders. It's been a tough summer at times, but he's starting to get better, starting to get a bit healthier, back closer to 100%. And of course, a trip to your home track will always help things a little bit. 12-12, though, very consistent, very solid, and he was fantastic on Saturday. 20 points added to his season total, and he's right there in the mix for one of the playoff wildcard spots. Of course, last summer, unfortunately, he missed the playoffs due to an illness. Maybe 2026 he will be able to compete in the playoff rounds during September. Speaking of the playoffs, somebody who is actually in the automatic seeding and would be one of the top 20 seeded into the field, Hunter Yoder, Club MX Yamaha. This is his most consistent day of the summer so far. He's, of course, the only rider for the Club MX team in the 250 class at Millville. Max Volan still out with injury. Cody Schock out for the year. Justin Turner's appearance at Southwick was, of course, a one-off before he shifts his focus to Loretta's. But 14-16, pretty solid day for Yoder. Once again, You have to remember that Yoder made his pro motocross debut last year after running 4 seasons of Supercross, and of course, he dealt with Epstein-Barr virus last summer, so he didn't show what he was fully capable of. Of course, Epstein-Barr, very draining on the human body, but Yoder's been back and he's been better this season. 14, 16, a nice consistent day, more building, more positives in the book for Yoder. Parker Ross, another one of the Bar X brigade. He was P2 early on in the first moto. He ran second for several minutes. Michael Mosman, of course, got around him, and a bunch of factory guys ended up working their way by. Ross slid back to 13th, but still a solid moto performance. Positives to take away from that ride. He got to set P2, and I know he's not been that high up before. So seeing him ride there in the front runners, he probably learned a lot in the process and probably realized how many strong riders there were flying through the pack. Of course, guys like Beaumaire, Kitchen, DeFrancisco, Hymas, a lot of really talented racers working their way through the pack. Then in the second moto, unfortunately, some sort of mechanical issue took Parker out of the race very early on. That's a real bummer because he wasn't able to back up his first moto showing. Could have been the best performance he's put together this year, but alas, Ross will have another chance this weekend at Washougal to prove that he belongs among the best in the 250 class. Marshall Welton. It was another weekend of one good, one bad for Marsh. In the first moto, it was a mechanical DNF that took him out of the race and put him in 39th position. Not the ideal start to the day, but hey, he qualified solidly, didn't have to worry about an LCQ or anything like the previous week. Marshall said that a rock got wedged between his countershaft sprocket and engine case, so engine issues there for the team, but they scrambled together and they put things back on track. And in that second moto, he was ripping because Marshall claimed his best moto finish of the season so far. 14th place for the number 65, and he's actually tied with Avery Long for 30th in the SMX standings. So he is right there on the verge of another wild card appearance. Brock Bennett back into the points for the first time since the season opener at Fox Raceway for the McGinley Clinic Privateer Support Program, number 159 on a Husqvarna. Brock usually punches above his weight, of course, a lot less support than some of these other riders, but he's going out there. He usually runs pretty solid in the races every single week. If you know Brock Bennett and you followed his career, he's usually not the best qualifier. He's way more of a racer. Sometimes that hurts him a bit. Of course, I think back to High Point. He ended up missing the cut for the motos, missed the cut in the consolation race, but ended up racing the second moto as an alternate. Brock, though, is quick during the races. He's always got pretty good fitness as well. 2018 for 20th overall, his best overall finish in a couple years. He's really solid out there. And I know a lot of guys get more attention. A lot of guys, of course, more budget, more support, bigger, more extravagant programs, whether it's training on the bike, whether it's off the bike. It doesn't matter. Brock Bennett's still going to give it 110% every single weekend. And it was a great ride for the number 159. His best career run was at Washougal, so keep an eye out for him this weekend. He might be able to creep up a little bit more after that great ride at Millville. And the opposite of his moto scores, going 18-20, was Gavin Towers on the Phoenix Racing Honda number 73. Towers' first trip to Millville as a pro. A solid day. Points in each moto. There were a couple weeks where Towers was like Marshall Welton, who I just mentioned a couple minutes ago, where he would have a good moto and then a crash or something to end the day and fall back down a little bit further. Returning back to the Toyota Redlands Bar X Yamaha program, and for the first time this summer, Cole Timbo was back in the points a year after scoring his last points. The Timbo train getting back on track. 16th in the first moto, really solid run there. 6 points on the board for the number 443. He had a penalty at High Point that left him with negative points after jumping on a red cross flag. So he's finally back to positive points for the summer. But regardless, a nice positive sign for Timbo. It had been a struggle to this point in the summer, but a sign of a turnaround possibly Just one spot shy of points in the second and final moto as well, but the 443 getting back closer to the level we saw him at a bit last year. Henry Miller was back in action for the first time this summer. Of course, he put together a career best 250 East Supercross season, scored his first career top five in Detroit. We interviewed him on this show afterwards. Go check that out if you haven't listened to it already. Henry was back. He crashed hard practicing at Glen Helen Raceway before the motocross season, had a shoulder injury, a couple facial injuries that have healed up. The shoulder is not at 100% though. He still gave it his best shot. Home race also for Henry. He's from Rochester, Minnesota. 17:26 for 23rd overall. Getting points in his first moto back was a pretty good sign for Henry. Unfortunately, faded a little bit in that second moto, of course, that shoulder bothering him a bit. But if he gets another start under his belt this weekend at Washougal, then a couple weeks to heal up, to recharge, to reset the batteries, and really dial in his program a little bit more before Unadilla, and he should be back in that top 15 fight week in and week out. Gizmo Racing Yamaha finally got on the board in the 250 class. CJ Bernard scoring his first points of the summer. He is a sophomore this year. Of course, last year he competed with the AEO Power Sports KTM team. This year on a Yamaha number 775. He's qualified for the show in 5 out of his 6 attempts this summer, but finally put it back into the points. 19th in the final moto. CJ putting the Gizmo crew back into the 250 points. Of course, they've been performing very well in the 450 class. Speaking of performing very well, on a wave of momentum, Russell Bacheri, after scoring in both motos at his home track of Southwick, he scored again in the first moto at Spring Creek, 19th position for the McGinley Clinic Privateer Support Program. Of course, 3D Racing carrying the legacy of the late great Bill Dill. A late crash dropped him out of the fight for points in that second moto. He slipped to 23rd, but all in all, Bacheri has been riding really well the last couple weeks, and he is getting closer and getting better in his third summer, his first real full summer of action. He started the year on the West Coast. The last couple years, he's done mainly the East Coast rounds, some here and there. He started his season at High Point the 2 previous seasons, but this year, with a whole year under his belt, you can see the progress out of the number 140. And of course, the final rider in the points in the 250 class, Hayes Edwards. You heard from him earlier in the show. A great showing from the number 146, despite flying through the air in that start crash. We hope you enjoyed Hayes on the show this week. Now for a few quick news and notes from outside the points in the 250 class. Another member of the McGinley Clinic Privateer Support Program putting together a solid day. The best of his career, actually. Fourth time qualifying for the moto, second time this season for Jaden Searles, aka Tank, number 951 on a Yamaha. He qualified inside the Fast 36 for the first time in his career, and he went 22-24, one spot shy of a point in the first moto, but a solid day from Tank. Improvement on the board for him. The local crowd at Millville was very stoked to see one of their own qualify into the field. Yes, he is from Wisconsin, not Minnesota, but he's raced at that track at Millville before, and he's one of the local guys. Wyatt McGrath, number 338. Kind of a funny visual if you see McGrath in 338, a famous motocross last name, albeit unrelated to the king of Supercross, and a famous number, of course, Jason Lawrence, Zach Osborne, among the racers who made 338 a very popular number. But Wyatt McGrath put his Husqvarna third in the consolation race to qualify for the race. He ended up 34th overall in his first career pro race, first attempt, first qualification. That had to be a great feeling for Wyatt. Also, kind of funny, if you look at the Super Motocross results sheets throughout the weekend, it has him listed simply as L. McGrath. Shout out to Wyatt, though, for qualifying for his first career race. And the 250 class finally got a bit of yellow magic. Axel Neff, the Pennsylvania native, number 959, backed by Rocket Exhaust and some other companies, he ended up racing the final 250 moto as an alternate. Of course, a couple guys went down hard. Caden Dudney, one of them. He did not return for the second moto. That allowed Deegan Van Vried and Axel Neff to get into the show. Neff, the first Suzuki in the 250 class, regardless of privateer or factory. He's the first Suzuki RMZ 250 to compete in the 250 division this summer. He finished 35th in the second moto. He's been racing some up in Canada, been racing, of course, here at the US. He competed at High Point his first race of the season. He has 3 attempts this summer, one now in the books, lining up as an alternate. Shout out to Axel, and shout out to those riders who made their first career appearances at Millville this weekend. Now switching to the 450 class, and the top two privateers in the order were from the same organization, Gizmo Racing Yamaha. Great run once again for Valentin Guillot for the third time in 7 weeks. He was the top 450 privateer. He was a bit disappointed with his performance on Saturday, but 16-13 for 14th overall. Valentin continuing to stack points, continuing to climb the ladder in both the Pro Motocross point standings and the SMX playoff standings. I doubt he'll be able to jump into the playoff seeding as one of the automatic berths, but you never know with Pro Motocross. He said, I was fighting against the track, the flow wasn't good after the weekend. He was the second best Yamaha also in the results page. Of course, Cooper Webb had a wheel issue, had to pull into the pits, get things worked on during the second moto, and Gio ended up ahead of him on the overall sheets. The other Gizmo Racing rider putting together a great day was Stefan Rubini, number 106 from France. Of course, Stefan returned to action a bit earlier this summer in Thunder Valley after tearing his Achilles at San Diego. I know I've mentioned that multiple times on the show, but only 5 months it took him to recover from that injury, and he put together his best day of the summer so far, 18-15 points in both motos. A great run from the French racer. Of course, so many talented French racers have competed over here in America throughout the years. Dylan Ferrandis, a current factory racer right now, but Stefan Rubini holding it down in the privateer ranks. Freddie Norn, of course, has been out since his Redbud practice incident that left him with a foot injury. Rubini, though, stepping up in his absence, putting together his best result of the summer. Next up in the overall sheets is Mark Finnis. And of course, he had that phenomenal ride. He was the top privateer at Redbud. He ended up getting an opportunity with Bubba Pauly's ISRT Kawasaki team. Cornelius Tondell moved on to the Monster Energy Kawasaki factory organization to fill in for the injured Chase Sexton. And Mark ended up inheriting his spot at ISRT. He will be on that team for the remainder of the summer. Of course, Mark National number 88 this season, and he put together a great first moto. He ran eighth for a good chunk of the race and held off Eli Tomac for a good chunk of the moto. He did mention in a TV interview with Haley Shanley that he faded a little bit later in the race, but he definitely has the speed to keep up with some of the big dogs and keep them at bay. Unfortunately, a couple of crashes at the end of the day in the second moto, so he pulled out of action early, went back to the pits after some bumps and bruises. But Finnis will be back in Washougal to compete and to put that ISRT Kawasaki team back toward the front of the privateer order. Behind him, 18th overall with 17-17 scores on the Wildcat Race Team Gas Gas. Lorenzo Locurcio, pretty quiet weekend, but a solid one nonetheless out of Lorenzo. And you want to talk about somebody who has improved exponentially from the first part to the second part of the season. After the first 4 rounds, he had only 4 points. In the last 3 races, Locurcio has scored 29. So he's definitely been on a roll lately since the return to action at Redbud. He's now up to 22nd in the point standings and definitely potential to gain more. Of course, the guy right ahead of him is Antonio Cairoli, and his 3 race stint here is done. Further back, 19th overall aboard the Partzilla Rocket Blaster Power PRMX Kawasaki machine, Money Mitch, Mitchell Harrison. He was also under the radar, not quite in that top 15 level like we saw from him a bit earlier in the summer, but still Points in both motos, plenty to be happy about. 21-14. Mitchell Harrison continuing to try to work and get an automatic berth in the playoffs. He's 22nd right now in the SMX playoff standings. He's right there behind Mikkel Harup. Not sure what Harup's status is for this weekend, but Justin Barcia did leapfrog him. So there's another really talented factory racer that jumped over him. Also, Justin Hill is on the entry list this week at Washougal, and Shane McElrath could be returning to racing soon as well. The bubble fight is going to be very, very interesting this year in the 450 class. So many talented racers going for those final spots in the playoffs. From a current PRMX rider to a former one, Devin Simonson, of course, now with the Club MX Yamaha team. He was also pretty solid, 1916 at Millville, a racer who doesn't have a ton of pro motocross experience, but he's also training for World Supercross right now. Simonson will be competing with the Rick Ware Racing organization in the SX2 class. So he's been running some Supercross practice on a 250, doing some pro motocross practice, and of course the actual races on a 450. He's been dabbling in a little bit of everything, but Simonson continuing to grow his notebook in the pro motocross ranks. Another Yamaha rider with a solid performance, Brighton Carroll scoring points for the second week in a row, 18th place run in the second moto. He finished just outside the points, 23, had a small tip over, 23rd place to begin the day, but an 18th at the end of the day. Carroll has been riding really, really well lately, the best form of his career in pro motocross. Of course, he had a really solid run in the Philadelphia Supercross. I believe it was his career best a bit earlier this year in April. Hamden Hudson stepped up for that final moto as well, a disappointing 28th to begin the day, but he moved up to 19th in the final race. Third consecutive week with points for Hudson. And he also had his best 250 motocross result a year ago at Washougal. So if you want another guy to keep an eye on, somebody who could potentially put together a solid run, it's the number 188. Hamden Hudson has been a lot better in the second stage of the season as well. Then we get to your final two privateers who scored points. They are both from the country of Denmark. First of all, Magnus Smith, number 456 on a Yamaha. He scored his first AMA points at Southwick, backed it up with another 20th place run on Saturday. He's been steadily climbing the overall sheets, 27th at Redbud, 24th at Southwick, 23rd at Millville, chipping away at better results slowly but surely is Magnus. And then Matty Jorgensen, first point of the summer. He just returned at Southwick after suffering a wrist injury during the middle portion of Supercross. Jorgensen, number 245 on the SLR Honda, the only SLR Honda rider to score points. Off weekend for Justin Rodbell. Not a great run for the 83, but Jorgensen did get to score his first point of the summer to end the day. The Canadian corner is back this weekend. The Triple Crown Series continuing to progress, and we're reaching the final stages of the season up in Canada. Only 2 rounds remaining. Sandeli marked round 6 of the championship, and it was a great day for some of the Americans in the field, including our guest last week on the Unsung Heroes, Kyle Murdoch, his first career podium, a sixth and a second for third overall P2. He was pitting under the SSR Kawasaki truck this weekend. What a showing for Kyle Murdoch. A week after he talked about wanting to score more points, wanting to get a lower number and a better number for 2027. And Kyle goes out there, puts it on the podium. Congratulations to Kyle. And he shared the podium with another American, Josh Boaz, on the AVL Racing Husqvarna 3-3, a very consistent, very good day for Josh on the number 27 Husky. His first podium in the 250 class this year. Congratulations to those two. Unfortunately, a late mechanical issue for Ryder Malinowski dropped him down the order. He won the first moto on the MX-101 Yamaha, but plummeted to 19th with an issue later in the day. And now that means Dylan Rimple on the GDR Honda leads the 250 standings. Some other names worth mentioning in the 250 class. Shout out to Carson Fields, 8'9" for 8th overall, the Michigan native, number 273. Larry Fortin was in the field on a 250, 12'7" for 9th overall. Unfortunately, though, Fortin had 6 motorcycles stolen from his garage after he got back from Canada. Visit Larry Fortin 111 on Instagram and help him out if you see some bikes around the Northeast. Some other Americans, Joe Tate, a P5 in the first moto, great showing, but unfortunately a DNF at the end of the day for Joe. Logan Riggins, 15-13 for 16th overall. Dane Morales, a pair of 17th place finishes. And the final 250 point of the afternoon went to TJ Lanfear on the number 575. In the 450 class, Dylan Wright got back to his winning ways with a 1-1, of course, the Canadian champion. Harry Kulis 2-2, Preston Kilroy 3-3. Kulis, of course, from Estonia, but raced in America the last couple years. Kilroy is an American from Afton, Wyoming, the defending 250 class champion who moved up mid-season. He has been on the podium overall every single round since moving up to the premier class. Some other Americans in the field included the number 841, Jeff Walker, going 9:17 for 12th overall. Gage Stein, 15:13 for 13th overall. Logan Leitzel has recently joined the ABL Racing Husqvarna team for the remainder of the season, but unfortunately he's been having some mechanical gremlins. He had a DNF the first moto, rebounded for 12th a little bit later in the afternoon. Travis Delnicki was also back on the gate, 19:23 for 21st overall for Travis, who is racing number 67 up in Canada this year. And in the WMX division, Jordan Jarvis extended her points lead with another 1-1 afternoon. She now has a 31-point gap over defending champion Jamie Astudillo. Of course, both of them from the United States of America. Some quick notes from racers outside the 450 points before we conclude. John Short competing in his first event of the summer. He's on a Honda 450, one spot short of points to end the day on the number 90 machine. He ended up 26th overall, 26-22 scores. A bit further back in 34th overall, Vinny Lahovey. He's been on Kawasaki's the last couple years, but he decided to make a mid-season switch for the first time in his pro career. Lahovey raced a Yamaha at Millville. 32-33 were his first moto scores aboard a Blue Crew machine. And Zach Williams, a Minnesota native returning to action at Spring Creek. He won the consolation race to get into the field. He said he felt a little bit rusty considering he hasn't raced since Salt Lake City, the Supercross finale in mid-May, a couple months off, but Williams put it into the show 34-32, representing the McGinley Clinic Privateer Support Program. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Unsung Heroes once again. The Spring Creek National is over with, and now this weekend we shift our focus to the Washougal National Round 8 of the Pro Motocross Championship, and of course, Washougal will be the final of this 4-race stretch in the middle of the season, 2 weeks off after Shoogs, and then the final 3 rounds of the summer. Once again, special thank you to Hayes Edwards for his appearance on this week's show. Go follow him and see what he's able to accomplish the rest of this season. I am Trey Stire. Thank you so much for tuning in once again, and I'll see you after Washougal.